Session, the March 5th, 2025 work session of the Jackson County Library District Board is called to order. May we have a roll call, please?
Director Keeper, Director Shepherd.
Here, and I can barely hear that mic.
Director Trancy.
Here.
And Director Keating.
Keating, yeah.
Keating. Sorry, I will correct that.
Even Keating.
Kevin, okay.
And welcome to staff that are here. Welcome to our virtual attendees. And again, the setup of this room is awkward for the virtual audience, and we apologize for that. We'll try and keep an eye out to make sure if anybody has a hand up that we recognize that. So please join me in thought as I read the JCLS land acknowledgement. Jackson County Library Services acknowledges that its libraries are located within the traditional lands of the Cow Creek Band of Umpqua Tribe of Indians and the Modoc Nation, as well as the Shasta, Takelma, and Lagawa people, whose descendants are now identified as members of the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians and the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde. Excuse me. We take this moment to recognize the indigenous peoples whose traditional lands are where residents of Jackson County live today. JCLS is committed to fostering understanding, deep respect, and honor for indigenous people, and we encourage you to learn more about the land you reside on. For more information, go to jcls.org/land. We are on to reviewing the 6-month financials for 24-25. I'm guessing that is Heather.
Yep. Heather, okay. Take it away.
Okay. So let's see. Provided with some documents that show our budgeting template for the upcoming year. We made a few changes to the format of the budget template to align better with the Oregon budget law guidance, which specifically requests that we break out the departments within the funds and then talk about each of the related expense categories under each department. So since that's what they expect to see, we thought might as well have everything in that format going forward. That is what you will approve when you submit those final documents. So, the first page is the summary of all the departments, and it shows total revenue. It shows each area. This shows last year's budget compared to where we're at standing at 6 months year to date. You all have already.
Heather, can you move the mic closer to you? Have it. Yeah.
So the board has seen the 6-month year-to-date numbers already in a different format for internal monthly reporting that we provided. So nothing's changed as far as what the numbers are. This is just the format that we'll use for budgeting. Behind the summary page is a breakout for each department. So it gives you a little bit more detail, some line items. So this is what we will be using internally. Behind this, we have more pages that break out by each department head or each branch, so that when we use our team to formulate the current budget, they will just have a template that's broken out even more than this, where they will go in by each line and use where we're at so far this year to help guide them to determine what we want to budget next year. So this just shows each of those 4 department summaries that flow into this. This really helps us see areas that we may have under or over budgeted this year. There are some things that look kind of off. For example, we budgeted utilities as a total for this year. However, we were recording it broken out by electricity and natural gas and garbage and all of that throughout the year, so that when we budget this year, we can use that as a better guide to help us with next year. So it looks like there's some consistencies when you go through this. A little bit how we break this out. And then there's also little things that may have gotten expensed to one department, but were budgeted in a different department. I think printing expense was an example of that, where it was in administrative services, and that it actually got posted against it. So, all that being said, current year-to-date numbers are in a good format for us to be going forward. And then on top of those sheets, I handed out 5-year forecast. And you'll bring up the. I apologize, it's tiny, so hopefully you can fill it up a little bit for people that are virtual, and maybe for us, maybe you can see up there.
Hold the wheel or click the thing and use the wheel. I know that. Okay. Oh, yes.
Yeah, it cuts off. So after we internally go through and update all of the numbers for our current year estimates, first draft, we also will plug those numbers into this 5-year forecast. And this helps us make sure that we're following our policies for having our ending fund balance to practice 4 months of operating expenses look like to keep in the ending fund balance. It just kind of gives us a good picture to make sure that we're not going to be broke in a couple of years. So, but this is very much big picture, right? We don't know a lot of these things. For example, with revenue, right now we're using a 4% increase year over year. Obviously, this will depend heavily on actual property values and our collection rate. We'll wait for the county's budget to come out, and they give us an estimate of what they anticipate property values to be, as well as the collection rate. And then we can put that into the current year, but then going forward, we'll still have to estimate. Another thing to note on revenue is that we will be, from after discussions with our auditors, is that we have to break out our interest income to all the different funds based on their amount, I guess, in the pot, how much they have in their bank. But we don't have to leave that interest income in those funds. We can move it back into the general fund for us to be able to use. And so we'll be making an adjustment this year for that, and it'll increase our fund balance by, right now, I guess it's going to be about $700,000. So that will be helpful. Haven't made that adjustment yet, so it's not reflected on here. And then I did put it in going forward for the next 5 years, so we'll be able to put that back in.
Can I have a question on that? I'm just looking at the interest income and the 24-25 budget on this page 1, it looks like, and it's different from the one that's on the form you just handed us out.
Okay, so this
From 620 to 400.
this interest income is for all funds. So this, and then the interest income on this 5-year forecast is just for the general fund. So let's see, $400,000 budgeted for the general fund interest income.
Mhm.
And for all funds together, the total interest income budgeted is $620,000.
Yeah, I mean, shouldn't
that
these
was
numbers
something, yeah.
match like the total revenue for
So this is 5-year is just the general fund.
And
And
this
then
is,
the budgets for all funds,
for instance, what else is?
capital improvement fund, and the
Okay.
grants fund.
Question?
Yep.
So overall, if we look at the beginning fund balance line.
Uh-huh.
Yep, I can hear you. It's coming through. Oh, wonderful. We see the downward trend all the way through projected 2930. Is that due to us holding the increase at a flat 4% while we anticipate everything else, like labor and everything else, to rise
So
significantly?
yeah, so I hadn't gotten to expenses yet, but after, basically what this shows is that we have a fairly set amount of revenues come in, we can predict that very well. We also, going through our expenses, we know for one, our biggest expense is personnel. So we are going to have increases year over year on that, so we put that also at 4%. But yeah, there's some things like our contracts for maintenance and custodial services, those types of things that, they're a 4% increase for them shows a lot more dollars than some of the other categories.
I bet.
So right now, all of these assumptions that we made are just that, they're assumptions. So I have a percentage increase going down here for each expense line item. And what that's telling us at this very high level at this point is that we have the net change on the bottom. We are looking at right around $600,000 deficit each year. So as it stands, what we use this for is to say, okay, well, we need that at least for next year. We try to get that net change to zero, right? We want to have a balanced budget. So that will be what we are working on as we go through this and get the more detailed expenses from our department heads, and we'll go through each one and try to do our best to get that to zero. And then again, that year over year tells us that we need what areas we need to watch for to try to save about how many dollars. So that's kind of the purpose of this tool.
Thank you.
Yep. Oh, yes, Marissa.
Marissa?
Did you email out the 5-year forecast? Cause I'm not seeing that.
It's up on the screen right now, but we didn't email it, and we just handed it out at the meeting.
Yeah, could you email that out? Cause I see that it's on the screen, but I would prefer to see it. I can't really read it that well. And then the other thing I was curious about, do we have any sense of data of like our increase in employees over time, like maybe, the past 10 years versus our population served? And then it would also be good to kind of get a narrative, and I don't know if we'll get this soon with kind of the pop, but it would be, nice to see, like, if we have increased employees, which is sense that I've gotten because we've increased services. It'd be nice to know kind of where those services have gone, and again, kind of showing that in the community.
Yeah, I don't have any of that information for you today. This is more looking at the last year to date, just the format of the
Right.
budget.
No, I understand that. I'm just saying going forward as we think about this budget season, that would be informative to have.
So, Marissa, you're asking, just for clarification, you're asking for a report of number of FTE, full-time equivalents, over the past 10 years?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, and you mentioned in relation to the population served, there are multiple factors in the last 5 years in particular that have drastically increased the size of our staff. And so it's not necessarily tied to population base, but to hours of service, bringing departments in-house that used to be contracted through our contract. So there's a lot of variables that won't necessarily, we've doubled, for example, the number of staff we've had since I started in 2018. And that doesn't mean that I hope not, in another 5 years, we'll double again, right? So I just want to, make sure there's context around providing that information.
Yeah, of course, I understand, but it's still nice to have that information with that context though, too. That's what I'm saying. Let's understand the context with it. And, I'm not saying that it's not valuable, like, but that's what I want to
So that's what
understand
her up to.
is where we're kind of putting those resources.
Question, does the Data and Metrics Committee have another meeting before the next budget conversation? No. It would be a good place for that conversation to land. Okay. Going forward.
We'd be happy we could send out the data to you and, Marissa.
I've got a quick question on the same subject, the salaries and wages. So you're using it, going forward 5 years, you're using a 4% assumption of increase. Right? And that would, like, what was the recent last 2 years increase in salary? Do you remember?
This current fiscal year, it was a 6% increase, and the year before it was 8, I think, right? What was our increase 2 years ago? It was higher.
So would we expect 4 to be a reasonable number for given that?
You know, every number is a space holder or placeholder, and those are fluid numbers. I think that we would be looking at every year to see what is a good basis.
Given the step is automatic, the step is how much?
Each step is 1.5%, and then the cost of living is
3% every year guaranteed. And so,
that is always part of the budget process, is determining how many steps.
but I mean, we can pretty much count on at least 3% going forward. So you're only adding in an extra 1. I'm worried that that's a little bit low. Of
Well,
an assumption.
it definitely could be low. I guess we haven't gotten, this is more to show you like the format of it. We haven't gone through the discussions of
Okay. I mean, well,
years yet, but I mean, yeah, I think I was overall looking at like the cost of living at 2.5 and then a 1 step. Just as a place.
okay. So that's 4.
And then fringe, not.
Yeah. Then
Right, so fringe is not a 34%
No.
increase, it's 34% of salaries.
Right.
Right, but I mean, you would not expect that to stay flat either, I would imagine.
No, and we haven't, again, we haven't accumulated all the data for this year. Right.
So okay. I'm just voicing a little concern that
Yeah.
looks low based on our history so far. And then I assume the number of our employees is going to be rising a bit as well. So
I think everybody would love there to be more room to make that higher percentage rate in there, but we have to make sure that we get it to zero balance too. So there, if you look at,
well, we have to forecast it right though. I mean, like,
right, no.
and then
we
cut
will.
other anyway. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
That's all I'm
no
saying.
problem. No, I agree. It's-
Raising
it's
the flag,
definitely
yeah.
a low number. It just is the starting point.
And that's our number 1 cost, right?
It's our largest cost.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is really just we wanted to make sure that you understood the process of how we kind of come to numbers that we do. You know, we've done the 6-month review, deep dive into the numbers, and I feel like they're solid. And then obviously, as we go up the rest of the year, we'll do the same. And then, you know, the next couple of months while we're budgeting, I'll make sure on the January, February numbers and comparing to make sure that we're not missing anything, expenses that come through those months as well.
Do we expect anything to go down?
No, not really. I don't think there was anything. Well, our Jackson County contract building will go down, but that's because we're supplementing it with our own landscaping contract outside of that. It's out. Yeah, nothing.
Digital materials, that's not coming down. Okay.
Thanks for the thorough explanation. And for the preview, because I understand like a lot of placeholders at this point. So this is
Maybe-
going to be the next step for a more thorough
Right.
plugging in of the figures. So it's a great preview. Thank you.
That this is a preview of what we're starting right now.
Would it be possible to maybe get the number of personnel that, along with the amount of the budgeted?
Okay.
I think that's what Marissa was asking for, was a kind of a summary of FTE. Oh, you're meaning on this document? Okay.
Yeah, like how many in sports service, how many community engagement?
I guess I have one question, but it's not about this document. Okay. On the support services summary, page 4. I understand that some things are supplies, scotch tape, staples, recover, protectors, all that. What is minor equipment?
Keep this one. Minor equipment is more something you would plug in. Okay. Right. So it would be
Pencil sharpener?
Calculator.
the equipment in this room.
Okay.
Mice or
The mouse and
Monitor
peripherals.
Okay, thank you. That helps because I know we have workstation, computer station.
Accessories. Yeah.
Okay, that's the only thing. It's about. I know it falls somewhere in between supplies and boom, laptop.
Right.
Cool. Thank you.
And for some of those items in minor equipment, we may have like a service contract to maintain them.
Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, so that's the numbers part. The other thing we wanted to do was go over our overview of the budget process.
Question about that?
All right.
Are y'all seeing a PowerPoint virtually?
Yes.
Awesome. I want to make sure technology is doing what I think it should.
Way less exciting than the numbers, but this is for everybody. So what is a budget? A budget is a financial plan that controls the district's spending authority, and it's a financial accountability tool, the vehicle for obtaining public opinion. This of the budget and the budgeting process, for one, it's required by state law. It provides a plan for staff. It's a communication tool and it's cost effective. And who's involved in budgeting would be the budget committee, the budget officer, who's myself, library director, administrative team, area and branch managers, department heads, and the public. Who's on the budget committee? We have a few of them here. It's our governing body, so the board plus an equal number of appointed electors, and all members have the same authority. The appointed electors are registered voters in the district. They cannot be officers, agents, or employees, and they are appointed for a staggered 3-year term. To expect of me to provide clear budget goals, objectives, and timelines, provide budget documentation for meetings, keep the level of discussion at a high level, and communicate comments and concerns to appropriate personnel for budget adjustments. And then this is a review of the funds that we budget for. So the general fund, which is where the majority of the costs lie. The miscellaneous grants fund. So this was established back in 2021. Tracking all the restricted donations, gifts, grants that are provided to the district.
So is that everything besides tax revenue?
By tax.
Is besides tax?
So in the miscellaneous grants
In the
fund,
Middle East, in that fund, is the money in there everything except the tax
The
revenue?
property tax. Almost everything. It doesn't include like our fees for printing and services,
And interest, I
and some
suppose.
interest is allocated there. But where the majority of the grants is all the restricted grants. So anything that you have restricted. There are a few miscellaneous grant revenues that come directly. into the general fund. And then the capital improvement fund, this is a fund, it's like a reserve fund. We established it for planned improvements, facilities, and property that we acquired. So these are our four core function areas. These align with the budget template you just saw. So we have public services, which is our community facing and branch services. Support services includes IT, technical services, collection management, and facilities. Community engagement is a new grouping for us, and this includes our Spanish engagement, marketing, outreach, and tech ed. And then administrative services is our library administration, foundation, HR, and finance. This is the org chart that kind of breaks out. Falls where?
Are there any questions about that? I know that this is a different grouping than what we've done in previous budgets. We had HR and finance like as a separate part of the budget from library administration, which is me, the foundation, and any board support in the budget. So it made sense to us to group all of those administrative functions together into one department. So just wanted to pause here and make sure that y'all understood who goes where.
Where is the finance, Carrie? I'm not seeing it.
Directly under me.
Ah, there it is. All right.
So in some of these cases, there are then some of these manager folks obviously manage other.
Correct.
This is not the whole.
So
org chart.
some of them are individual people and some are.
Right.
So the green is your admin team officially? Is
Yes.
it? Okay.
For those whose names are known, can you please put some names to obviously, of course, you're executive assistant, but remind me, who's assistant director of public services?
Yep. So we have Joan is
Joan.
public services, Kelda is support services, finance manager is Heather, Bryn is our HR manager, community engagement services manager position is posted right now, and that will be a new person. And then Jenny Auer is our foundation director.
So most of the folks are in this room.
Correct.
Great. Thanks.
Any other discussion about those sections?
Marta?
Question about the equal number of electors that are appointed to the budget committee at a staggered 3-year term. Who appoints them?
We do. The board,
Oh,
board members do. So
Okay.
we have a selection process. We didn't have any
vacancies.
terms up this go round. Next year we'll have a couple, and I should actually, if you want to, are we done presenting? Or we do have 2 budget committee members here today, at least 2. We have Kathy DeWolf in the room with us, and then virtually we have David Matthew, who has been on, I believe this is his 3rd year. No, he started his second 3-year term. So we do have a couple of them with us. And then we have Doug Townsend and Echo Fields and Artie Kirsch are the other 3 members. But when we have a vacancy, we post it on our website and we take applications and then have a budget committee assignment assessment of 2 board members and myself, who then interview those candidates and bring forward recommendation to you all for that appointment. And every year, that I've been here, we've had between 3 and 5 candidates. And then also if someone is interested in serving a second term, we always make that option available as well.
thank you.
So then I just wanted to talk about the schedule. So I had, as part of the handout, there was a budget calendar, which lays out the dates that we have scheduled. But just wanted to highlight that there is another budget committee work session, which we don't have scheduled yet, but we anticipate that will be early April. Our first budget meeting will be beginning of May. And we also didn't have that scheduled, but we're I tentatively set hopefully May 1st or 5th, depending on people's availability. And then once we have that meeting, if we feel it's necessary at that point, we will schedule a second meeting. And then the official budget hearing will be, this is the board meeting, right, June 18th.
Correct.
And then there's the last page of resources of where all this information comes from board and budget.
So we're librarians, we share budgets, we share resources, so, and we'll be happy to email out this presentation as well as that 5-year forecast to all of you, so you have that to look at more carefully or more closely.
One question, will the budget committee meetings and the meetings that we just talked about that are not set yet, will there be a virtual option for those?
I believe so. Yeah.
Yep, as public meetings, we're required to have a virtual option for them.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and Yoli and I talked this morning about doing a doodle poll for both of those two upcoming meetings, both the work session and the budget committee meeting, so that, because getting 10 of you in the same room together, I think is even more challenging than getting 5. So go figure. David, do you have any questions about the information presented today, or Kathy? I know you came in a little bit late, but
Make sure I'm not on mute here. No, no, everything looks pretty clear. I appreciate providing the material ahead of time.
I think, Marissa, do you have a question, or you had a thumbs up? So I'm not.
Yeah, that was thumbs up. That, yeah, it was understood today's meeting and information.
So are you gonna be revising this soon, or?
Well, so we are just starting our internal budgeting. So I've got the template ready. We're meeting tomorrow to go over with the admin team, and then we'll be handing it out to the department heads to compile their data. So we're right beginning of the process. Once I start getting that data back, then it all flows through to that, and then that's how I get a big picture of, okay, does this work or does it not work? Where do we need to go back and make adjustments?
Cool. So just on the calendar though, when do you think we should expect like a budget that's pretty close to being final,
Well,
or at least final for review?
well, the next step is for us to meet with the budget committee. So that's the meeting I was just saying.
The work session.
The work
Early
session,
April.
by early April. We have it on our calendar to have a complete draft by April 22nd.
Oh, there it is.
And then and then the next, so it'll be the next budget committee work session will be the draft.
Okay.
the statutory answer to your question is that we are required to provide that to you no more than 30 days in advance of the first May budget committee meeting. So that's that number 7 there. First notice no more than 30 days before and at least 5 days prior or 10 days before online. So that's our window, is having a final budget or a budget proposal out both to you and to the public by mid-April, mid to late April.
I have a question. I'm not sure it's appropriate to this setting, but I'll ask and you can tell me if it's not. So when the admin team meets, do the individual departments or sections or whatever you call them have budget targets? I mean, so they kind of know what parameters they have to work with rather than just.
Right. So I just by the very rough numbers I have right now, parameters to budget as close as possible to the current year, just knowing we don't have a lot of room to grow. So with explanation of, we know this contract's going to be more or whatever, so there'll be a place for them to request additional funds for those types of things. I don't think the spot that we're in right now, just looking at it, I don't think we can say, oh, increase by 5%. I don't think that's feasible. So we're going to start with the
and then justify any requests for more, I assume.
And we've also instructed, or for the past several years, and same approach for this next year, is a zero-based approach to budgeting. So we're providing current year numbers to help provide guidance, but don't ask for the exact same thing you asked for this year just because you asked for it this year. You need to justify why that same level of funding is what you're requesting. And then, as you all know, we do have the grant funding and the capital improvement fund. So with that grant funding and with our financial policy of spending the most restricted funds first, that is something that we use in the budget process as well. And that's why it's important for us in the budget process to know, friends' contributions and also the funding priorities from the foundation. And so as we go through the budget process, that is something that we'll work with and talk with Jenny and the foundation board about where they might think they can successfully raise some funds to help supplement the general fund budget that we have planned. It all goes together.
I have kind of another related question. So is the primary thing that would drive looking at curtailing spending in any particular area kind of be the strategic plan? I mean, if for a manager that's looking at, I've got this much money and that's not going to cover everything I've got, would that be the overarching thing that would drive decision-making on where to restrict?
That's correct. So as we're preparing the budget and working towards that first budget work session, that's where we talk about the major strategic projects that will cost money, if you will. And that is a factor that we use both system-wide and for individual departments, is factoring in where does what you're asking for or what projects you're bringing forward, how do those fit into the overall strategic plan?
I have a different question, and it's probably silly, but is there any place in your work where, we have under public services and support services, we have the grants fund and the general fund and the capital money broken out. Is there any place where you roll that together so you sort of see what the total of what everybody spends?
There's
Is that something you would ever think about sharing with us so that we don't have to just add it all up?
right. So the 5-year forecast actually that we handed out is totaled by, it's not broken out by the departments. So that is one way of looking at it for just the general fund. And yeah, like I said, this is kind of, the template is a work in process. The goal was to get it to align with the Oregon law. So we can definitely move things around. But I do, one other thing that you would have access to is the reports that we provide, the monthly ones that have it broken out. It's all combined as well.
And also on the bottom of page 2, there's the grand total little box of personnel, materials and services, capital outlay, contingency.
Okay.
The grand total.
Right.
That was one of my questions when Heather and I were looking at this. I was like, it's great to have it broken out and see like
Right.
how it's sub done, but then at the end of the day, how much is personnel going to cost? So yes, so we have it both ways because it's both pieces of information are helpful.
Mhm.
And looking at as we look at personnel, and I think kind of Kevin, I think it was your question of adding the number of FTE under personnel for each department. Looking at this and saying, one would assume that public services therefore has more people because they're at $6 million versus 1.5 million for support services. But, looking at, as a public institution, you would expect to see most of your personnel expenditures in those public service positions. So it ties together.
Question. So on the larger document, the year-to-date snapshot was taken on December 31st.
Yes.
24.
Yeah.
What about this one?
also.
Same time?
Yeah.
One more question. Who is the final authority on the certifying taxes, which is the second to last step in the process? For example, on a different not-for-profit where I'm the board president, when we file our taxes, then 990, I sign it after a lot of thorough review. I'm guessing this is different. Certifying taxes, who is the individual ultimately responsible for it, or is it a board unanimous decision?
So you guys sign, the board signs the last one.
There are
The
4
motion.
resolutions
Yeah,
that the board
resolution.
will, the board will pass in June as part of the official adoption of the budget that is passed by the budget committee in May. So at the June board meeting, we'll pass a resolution for the budget itself, for the tax collection rate. I can't remember, there's 4.
Okay.
I can only remember 2 off the top of my head,
The
because we used to
appropriations-
combine them into 2 documents instead of 4.
The appropriations, that was one of the reasons for
Right.
splitting it this way.
So because of the nature of the entity, it's not any one individual, it is a collective board decision.
Correct.
Thank you.
And then we file that with the county as official.
I really appreciate having the work session context, so I can ask some of these less sophisticated questions.
Yeah, and Kathy has a question.
I have a quick question. I know it came in late, sorry, but I, looking at the budgeted 24-25 and year-to-date, other than in the salaries and wages, and all the other things, are there any, and you might talk about it, are there any areas where you're expecting some surprises to hit for the next 6 months that weren't budgeted for?
Not so far.
Okay,
It's not that I anticipate, and so far, everything seems to be right on target. Those percentages aren't here, but there's very few areas that are outside of our, well, that's not true. There's quite a few that are under budget right now, and I'm hoping that will carry forward to help us.
Yeah, that's always good.
Balance, yeah.
Good question. Let's say someone slipped and fell in front of the door out there and sued the district for $1 million. Where would that show up?
Well, that would be covered by our insurance,
Insurance.
so we wouldn't have any expense on here.
Okay.
That's why
So
we keep
everything-
it well paid.
Well, that's definitely. So we wouldn't have any legal fees
well,
that
we
would
would
not
have-
be covered by insurance theoretically, or?
Theoretically, usually the coverage covers well, they give you their own attorney, right? They assign one, so it would be all covered through the workers' comp policy, or not workers' comp, what if liability, depending on who fell.
So there's
Yeah,
no,
that's true.
no budgeted
Yeah.
expense. for
Yeah,
that.
no,
Right, so the,
so
if
insurance
there
is-
was a payout, or, if the claimant won,
Uh-huh.
that would be paid out through our insurance, and it would likely be reflected in our insurance premiums for the following year.
Okay.
Is my understanding.
I recall from a previous conversation that the 45,000 due to the elections office, so the county clerk, that's for them helping run the process of the elections. When is that due? Is that due right after the elections? I mean, when do they send the invoice, or is it a check?
It will be invoiced within the same fiscal year, so when the ballot is finalized and they know how many measures or elections are on there, it's calculated as a percent of the total ballot and cost of the ballot. So we pay our true cost, if you will, for having the issue of the election. So it's all formula
So we
based.
want lots of things on it then.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet, so we should.
That's why May elections
We
are
won't be
probably
able-
expensive.
We won't be able to see it until after
March.
the
The
March
next one.
20th.
The final
So
filing
I don't
deadline.
believe we see the invoice until after the May 25th election, but then we have it and we have it paid. So it's within the fiscal year that the election happens. And we use the information from 2 years ago to say 45.
Echo has joined.
Thank you, Echo. We're running quickly today, so it's
That's
almost
okay.
over.
I'm distracted because I'm puppy sitting a 4-month-old Chihuahua, and I got totally distracted.
I have one other, maybe Heather question. At what point might we have the information relative to personnel costs? I mean, fringe and salaries have a closer target than guessing.
Well, it'll all be part of the same process. So I know Bryn will be working on collecting some data for our staff levels and everything. And then there's an analysis that's done for cost of living increase. And then, but is that presented at the
Yeah, so
separately?
we have presented the cost of living and proposed salary increases to the board in April, because it's fun. We're all asking each other what we're anticipating for cost of living increases, and we're all calculating it at that same time. So the RVCOG has already, their HR department has started doing that research. And what's really nice with them is that their membership is a lot of the local government entities, including many of the cities and towns in Jackson County. And so that's one source. The federal cost of living adjustment for Social Security came out in January at 2.5% at the federal level, if you will. So, that's where we start to get that information, and we'll bring that to you all and factor that into the budget when we get there.
that one's brought to the board meeting though for approval.
Correct.
For
And the providers that provide fringe benefits, do they have a deadline at which they have to provide you with information?
Yeah, so our insurance is primarily through the special district insurance. S, I don't remember what S stands for, but anyway, through our membership at SDAO, and our insurance broker is working with them right now, and we should have a preliminary number by mid-March. So any day now, and that will be for our insurance benefits. Yes, for medical, health insurance.
Carrie, I have another question. This is just from a cautionary experience from another nonprofit organization I'm on the finance committee for. Under your insurance line on here, is that just strictly personal liability insurance for slip and fall and board and that sort of thing? Or is that insurance for the building itself? Is that included
It's
in there?
all of that. It's
All
our
of
property insurance,
Property.
liability, and cybersecurity, for example. So there have been wildfires that have increased that dramatically over the last couple of years. Cybersecurity premiums have also increased significantly with other incidents that have happened. So yeah.
Just in your experience and being in this building, and it's now going on 20 years old, or I don't know how long it is, have there been any structural or other issues that you've had to put in a claim for on the property insurance?
There have not been significant property insurance claims that we have filed. They did a physical assessment of our buildings 2 fiscal years ago. And so our insurance premiums went up more significantly that year because it was based on recent assessed replacement value of the properties. And that was something that SDAO warned us there would probably be a more significant increase that year. And then with the wildfire maps that have been coming out, there's also some concerns about, I believe it's 3 of our branches that are in a higher danger area for wildfire. So that will probably factor into our insurance premiums in the future as well.
4. I would think it'd be 4 at least.
We got the official
Yeah, I'm sure.
notification.
Anyway. There's several for sure.
And in general, just I think natural disasters and insurance claims because of natural disasters across the country are increasing premiums.
Just to repeat on microphone for y'all virtually that with natural disasters in general, that is increasing insurance premiums.
Quick question on hotspots, telecom hotspots. Are those physical units that we're going for?
They are.
And we replace them every year, or why is it an annual thing?
Because we pay for the data that goes with the hotspot. So there's a
That's what I
hotspot
was
that,
asking.
so the hotspot itself is, they give it to us for pretty much free, and then they charge us monthly for the data that goes with it. It is a program that right now is in a pilot year with the FCC to be what we call E-ratable, so eligible for our E-rate discount. So we have, right now, the window is open. They had until 4 o'clock today to send any questions to Kelda that they had on submitting a proposal for hotspots for libraries. And then they'll be E-ratable, which would mean that they are eligible for our 80 to 90% discount on that. So that may, if that passes, or if we do get that, that would significantly reduce that cost for hotspots. But and that is a program that it's something that we are continually trying to look at the most cost-effective way to run that program.
Who decides that question about whether it will be E-ratable or not?
The FCC decided that it would be E-ratable.
FCC. Oh, so that's just decided already.
Absolutely, yeah. The filing window has opened, and the RFPs are due next week or in 2 weeks. So we're in the middle of that RFP for those. And so we've been working with our E-rate consultant for that project.
Because we've spent piles of money on those.
Yes.
And that would be a decision that affects all of the libraries in Oregon that provide hotspots. Everybody who has E-rate, who's a recipient of E-rate?
Yes, which is only 26% of libraries in Oregon that participate in E-rate. So, and that is an area that the federal funding is in question for, is the FCC, and particularly I know the question has come forward with E-rate or hotspots for schools. I haven't seen the question as much for libraries, but it's the first year they've included it, and also at a time when the FCC is reanalyzing that funding.
Yeah, wish Oregon Broadband Advisory Council talked about it more. And I hope they might.
So why do only, this is completely off topic, and I apologize if this is long, you don't answer it, but why do only 26% of the libraries want to do stuff with E-rate?
So
is it eligibility or
there
is
are
it?
A couple of factors. So libraries in some of the public libraries in Oregon are part of city or county government. Yeah. And so they're part of that infrastructure for their broadband technology. And it's hard to separate out the costs strictly for the library. That's one reason. And that is actually like Multnomah County is part of City of Portland's network for E-rate. So they're like, we wouldn't know how to charge separately for the library. Another is that it does require you to filter your internet services.
That's right. I remember when we did that.
With the Child Internet Services, or CPAS,
yes,
Child Internet Protection Act. And so those are two factors. And the third is that federal funding is complicated. And if you have a small staff and you don't have the technical expertise to be able to manage your way through that system, that is a really big barrier, particularly for smaller libraries. And so that is something that we're trying to work at the state level with the state library to say, is it possible to get an E-rate consultant who would be able to help more libraries be eligible for E-rate funding? So multiple levels, multiple reasons why.
I was just curious.
Hey, trust me, when I first moved here, I was like, why doesn't everybody participate?
Well, exactly.
Yeah. So, and then the advantage to the state is that it brings more federal dollars in to fund and supplement.
Oh, this library benefited hugely from E-rate.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And hotspots are still widely used. I mean, the demand has not diminished for those. I know
the demand has not diminished for that, and that is something that libraries nationally are discussing. Is this a cost-effective program to run? Because I think we've been seeing our loss rate increase of people checking them out and not bringing them back. We do disable them, so they're not necessarily benefiting from having a dead hotspot, but they're not coming back. We had a just broken rate for a while. So, for the number that we have and the number that are in service, can we get to a better sweet spot for that? Is it a program that is worth continuing in terms of cost per circulation, for example, or what is the loss rate on those? And again, the loss rate, the cost is that monthly charge for data. And when we first started the program, we were doing a flat we had a flat amount of how many gigabytes of data each hotspot had for months. That was one of the ways we throttled how long people had it checked out for. It was because, well, we may burn through the data that's available in 2 weeks. So checking it out for 3 doesn't do any good. We recently renegotiated, so that is unlimited data now. So that helps, right? And helps us be able to turn those over more quickly so that we can keep up with demand. We also find it's used more in some of our outlying areas where people don't have that internet service at home. And so for the people who need it, it's a really valuable service. Is the library the most appropriate person to fill that gap? So these are all some of those philosophical questions that make for fun dinner party conversations.
Yeah, and I mean, if you were to,
Board meeting conversations sometimes.
I mean, if you were to guess at kind of the typical user, sounds like rural is probably the primary group utilizing hotspots. I mean, or urban folks that don't have access because of.
The last bit of data that I saw, actually, yes, it was spread across all branches, concentrated in our population centers. So Ashland and Medford had the most checkouts, but definitely spread through the rural branches as well. And I just want to say too, the labor intensiveness of managing the program for staff is another factor to consider.
Thank you. Yeah, so in the urban areas, you know, you have people who are either on the go or can't afford internet at home, or they have an interview coming up and they're like, how can I do this interview? I'm like, here's a hotspot, you can do it in your home office or whatever. So several different factors.
Super valuable to people that need them.
Right.
So that's satellite that we're using for those hotspots.
Cellular. Yeah. Satellite on the dark band, cellular in the hotspots.
And we've got cellular coverage pretty well now that we're using US. This is US cellular.
We're
now,
using
right?
US cellular right now with the RFP. We're, you know, who knows who will come back. I think when we first started with the E-rate or the hotspot program, we had some that were T-Mobile and some that were US cellular, and depending on where in the county you were, one worked better than the other. So we're trying to meet the highest, reach the highest coverage area, service coverage area that we can.
Is this something that you feel gets abused frequently, or is that even something you can tell?
That's why, you know, when we're looking at the loss rate, that's where some of it's damage and some of it's abuse. I mean, abuse being more likely people who aren't bringing it back. We do have repeat customers, and I don't think they're abusing it. I think they're truly in need of it on a regular basis.
More questions from anybody? I know it's a little bit difficult when you're not in the room, and these are kind of conversations that may be a little bit hard to hear or engage with, but feel free if you have a question to speak up.
I think it'll be, I think we may have more at the work session.
I look forward to seeing the doodle poll. I'll respond as soon as I can. I might miss the April board meeting, but I'll read the materials. While we're all here before we're adjourned, I sent out an email to the board that myself and Kevin Kidding will be gone for the RVCOG board
I
meeting.
will also be gone.
Yes. So is there a board member like Vicky or Marisa who can stand in for us on the RVCOG board meeting on April 23rd at noon? They provide a meal, or you can attend virtually. It's important because we are part of the quorum. It's an important one for us to attend.
Kevin, are you going to OLA on Wednesday? Would you be available on Wednesday? Or Marissa, would you be available at noon on Wednesday?
Might be able to zoom in. Did you say
Yeah,
it's
you can
really more
zoom.
important to be there?
You get better interaction if you're there in person, but
No, but
that's-
you'd count for the quorum if you were there.
oh, you count for the
Vice
quorum
versa.
even if you're virtually.
I
So they
attended
are
virtually
inclusive
quite a bit.
and they have very similar microphones set up around the room. I wanted to first explore if anybody can attend in person.
I'll-
Marissa, can
I'll
you
be in
attend?
Eugene.
Yeah, I might be able to, but let me double check my calendar and then, yeah, I'd need just a better rundown of what you want me to discuss.
Of course, yep, and there are usually several points from the advocacy toolkit and just what's happening. Last time I reported on the new community engagement services position opening up just a couple of days prior, the Rogue Reads Guide, the art author talk that was just a success, and a couple of other things. So it's very, very brief, but being there, it's important that RECOG is clearly an amazing partner in supporting a lot of the things we do. We rely on them for a lot of things. So
You
yeah,
could
we'll
brag
connect.
about Valley Park.
Yeah. I'll connect. It's usually very brief. And they stick to an hour. So thank you for your consideration. We'll connect more.
Well, any last minute anythings? Yes, we will. Work session is adjourned.
All right.
All right.